Hello everybody, in today's video I am going to be reviewing volume number 7 of Aneko Usagi's light novel series, The Rising of the Shield Hero. I actually haven't read a volume of Shield Hero since March, so it seems like a really long time, and I am currently behind in this series. Volume 8 is already out, and Volume 9 is coming out in October. This has been one of those series that I've followed for quite a while. I've really enjoyed this series, so it's kind of nice in a way to get back to it, but unfortunately, this was not the strongest volume to return to the series on. So in this volume, we have, well, it reminds me of a hybrid of two things. First, it reminds me of like one of those boss battles in RPGs where you kill the big boss and you're all sitting there going, wow, that was tough. And you look at your characters and you're out of all of your potions and you've used up all of your magic and everything else. And then the boss comes back to life even nastier and stronger than the last time you killed it. And you're like, how am I gonna beat this thing now? That's really kind of what happens in this book. Our big, huge tortoise from last volume that we thought was defeated, yeah, no, not so much. It's back and it's even angrier and nastier than before. And I guess seeing as how we kind of tried to kill it, I guess well, it's kind of explanatory why it's a little bit pissed, but nonetheless, the majority of this book, in fact, pretty much the whole thing, is Naofumi and company trying to figure out how to defeat this thing. And that brings me to sort of the second thing it reminds me of, which is your typical kaiju movie, which the whole plot is basically try this to beat it, fail, try this to beat it, fail. Somebody finds something in some ancient writing somewhere that says, hey, if we do this, we could beat it. And we try that. And, the rest goes on and on. I think back to those earlier volumes where every chapter was something new. You'd have a village they would visit, and it was overrun with all sorts of vegetation. There was some weird kind of monster. There was like the zombie dragon in the one. So it always felt like in the earlier books, like the book was constantly moving. You didn't really get bogged down in any one thing because there was always some new issue and new way to try and defeat it. This one, I think, suffers a little bit because there's only one focus throughout the good portion of the book. I mean, really, the only other subplot in this book is the whole missing other three heroes. And even that kind of gets tied up into this because, of course, they disappeared while going to fight this spirit tortoise. So, in a way, this book feels like filler because it has the same sort of main problem that we had for a good chunk of the previous volume. And the things that it sets up towards the end of this book are where you're like, okay, here's the new arc. If you take a look at the first sort of, now we've gotten through 7 books of this. If I take a look at, say, volumes number 1 through 4, that was the arc of Naofumi as villain and then Naofumi becoming a hero and sort of earning his place in the world. Volume number 5 then begins, and then volume 5 and this 6, and now this volume, 6 and 7, is another arc, you could say, but it doesn't really feel like an actual arc to me. Like, now, Fumi's journey through volume number 1 to 4 felt like a very big arc. It felt like this journey, this development. We had this character who was reduced to nothing, who by the end of it was finally given his place amongst the heroes. This arc feels more like a transition. It feels more like, now we have to move Naofumi from this spot where he's here and move him somewhere else to the actual story now, the actual story arc that we want to tell. These last 3 books have felt more like that. Well, I mean, the RPG analysis always works really well, especially with this series, since, how many times does Naofumi reference it that it's like a game? This feels like the grinding part of the game where you're doing all sorts of little quests and stuff like that that don't seem to really matter that much to the story. And it's all just so that your character can level up so that you're ready for the next part of the story. And that you've just got to kind of kill that one key boss, and boom, all of a sudden new parts of the story open up, and you feel like, wow, now I'm actually progressing again. I'm not just hammering away at the grind. And that's kind of how this feels. There are obviously some important plot points in this book. You cannot skip it. There's just really no way that you're going to be able to jump into volume number 8, even though, like I said, that's probably a really big start of a new arc. There's no way you can jump into volume number 8 without having read this volume. It won't make sense where it starts. It won't make sense. Well, okay. Here's the thing that I kind of like with Usagi's books is that there's always this prologue that goes on for about 20 pages where all the backstory of everything that happened gets told. So you probably could jump right into 8, but well, I'm still one to advocate for the whole journey, not just the Coles Notes version of it. So there are a lot of things that go on in this book that are going to be important. There is a lot of setup for the next arc. There's the introduction of who is probably going to be the main villain of the next arc. There is a very important setup as to how Naofumi moves to a new location where that arc is going to be taking place. There is development with Lark, Teresa, and Glass that is important, especially in regards to their relationship with Naofumi and his team. So there is a lot of important character stuff, and there's a lot of introductions that are very important in this book. It just felt like the bulk of the book, though, was a rehashing of, well, we killed this thing last time. Really? Do we need to spend 300 pages killing it again? Why could we have not just kind of wrapped this little bit into the previous volume and just gotten on with things? But that's how it is, and there's not much that we can do about it. The one thing that I will say is kind of interesting in this book, and this one sort of theme that I think, particularly given the crazy weather that we're having in our world right now, I thought was kind of funny. And that's this whole idea that the planet itself will protect itself, even if it means destroying life. So we have this kind of interesting idea where it's like you have the heroes who are dedicated to saving the lives of the people on the planet, but then you also have the planet itself that's kind of like, meh, if I gotta sacrifice the majority of you to keep myself going, I'm willing to do that. And as I said, it struck me as funny that I'm sitting there going like, well, here's this world creating like a disaster basically to destroy things just to keep itself alive. And it kind of feels a lot like what's happening with our world right now, where Mother Nature seems really angry at us and really doesn't seem to have a problem with killing a whole lot of us to keep herself going. I mean, I guess that's just one interpretation of it. We could also interpret it as she's pissed off because we have messed with her in a huge way and she's just getting a little bit of revenge. Whatever. I guess it depends on your own where you sit, and I'm getting way off track with this in terms of being a light novel series, but I'm just saying this is where sometimes when you're reading something, you're like, oh, I kind of see that going on out my front window right now. So, all in all, volume number 7, it's not a horrible volume. It's just, when I guess it's because I haven't read the series for a while, and I was kind of hoping that things would really progress along and we'd get a lot more reveals about what's really happening with these waves and what these waves really are. We do get a little bit of that, but it wasn't enough for my liking. But again, it really does seem like this is the book that's setting up the new arc. So volume number 8, I believe, is where that's all going to happen. Well, given how this one ends, there's just no way that volume 8 can't start something new. So volume number 7, not the most horrible light novel ever written, but definitely one of the weaker entries in the Shield Hero series. Still lots to enjoy out of it. Still absolutely there are some important parts in the book that if you want to keep reading the series, you're just going to have to get there. But for me, it just felt a little bit slower and a little bit filler, like, well, very much like the last volume did. So I'm really looking forward to getting out of this filler phase and this grinding phase and getting into the actual story component again. So, seeing as how all of my recent reviews have been very fantasy based, I thought I would do something a little bit different and kind of bring it back to our world. So, my next review will be volume number 3 of my youth romantic comedy Is Wrong as I Expected. Really enjoyed this series so far, and I had the book, and like I said, I've been reading a lot of fantasy, and to be honest, I got a lot of kind of fantasy-ish stuff to read still, so felt like doing something a little bit different. So that will be my next review. So if you're brand new to the channel and you love light novels, you should consider subscribing. I review 2 to 3 volumes of light novels every single week. I also do a weekly countdown of the top 10 light novels in Japan. Thank you all for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.